We're good to go? Okay. So, since the launch of Prismatic, Titans have been a little bit of a hot topic to talk about for a while. And I thought that I, as a Titan main, should throw my metaphorical hat into the ring and talk about my proposed changes to the Titan class. First, we're going to be tackling the individual subclasses, which will include the new subclass Fantasy. Then we'll be going into the removed subclasses, then the reworked ability, or the removed abilities, reworked abilities, and new abilities, and the ability buffs. And I'm going to tackle these subclasses from the one that took the most amount of work from the one from the least amount of work to the one with the most amount of work, then ending with Prismatic, since that's kind of a conglomerate of everything. Also, keep in mind, these changes were made a long time ago, back when this was still a really talked about topic. So, I'm very late to this. Blame my performance anxiety. Yeah. So, also, I will be I'll be stating these with PvE in mind, because I don't really care about PvP anymore. Just like a real Bungie employee. So, if you want to gauge how this would work in PvP, I am not going to stop you. In fact, I welcome it. When this video comes out, I'll let y'all talk amongst yourselves. Okay. I believe that's it for the beginning part. So I'm going to start with the subclass that took the least amount of work. Sentinel. The Defender. With the Defender Fantasy. It already does this pretty well. I'm just gonna tweak a few things. First off, I want to get rid of Shield Bash. This is going to be a common thing in these changes. I want to get rid of the the shoulder charge melees and replace them with something a little less generic. So instead, we're going to replace it with the suppressor shield melee. It works the same as the shield throw melee, but it moves this slower, right? And it will suppress the target on hit. And the only buff really is for Sentinel Shield. I want to buff the damage the bonus damage allies they get while it's shooting through with the banner shield up to 100%. So it should double the amount of damage your ally should be doing. Because when you run this super and you're blocking with it, that's one less person doing damage. So, not only do we need to actually make it worth using, we need to compensate for the other person not being there, not doing damage. So, I want to say it's like 20% or something right now. Well, I don't actually have the current day numbers, but I want to bump that up to 100%, to double damage. Okay. That was the one with the least amount of work. Next, let's go into Striker. this striker is going to have the melee bruiser for a fantasy, which it already does pretty well. The only thing I'm going to rework knockout slightly. I want to change it to defeating an arc debuff target or defeating a target with your melee ability gives you 5% super energy, 75 health, and amplified. This will also make your base melee deal more damage and actually deal arc damage. It's more or less what knockout does now, but like, it's less wordy. It's one paragraph instead of two. And we all know Titans don't read. So, just cleaning it up a little bit. And I have some new abilities, but I'll cover one of them. I will cover the new melee I want to bring in, and that's an ability called Bolt Strike. You throw a slow-moving bolt of pure arc energy, and it deals 416 damage on impact, and it'll jolt the target. So, this is not going to be a wind-up like you have with the other three melees. You just kind of aim and throw. But I do want to make it slow-moving, so it's still incentivized to... You're still incentivized to go into the fray. So for the buffed abilities, I want to make Fist of Havoc deal. Actually, you just recently got a... Final blows extend its duration. Okay. So, when you get a kill with Fist of Havoc, I want it to grant a little bit of health. And that's just any kill. Light attack, heavy attack, any attack, just any kill with any attacks, with either attacks, so with any kill with the super will give you a little bit of health. And the heavy attack I want to make deal a static 7,528 impact and 836 aftershock. And then for the other buff, I want to buff the Juggernaut ability. It's pretty okay with this buff. I mean, the Bolt Charge one is kind of cool, but I want to make the actual shield part worth it. So I want it to now passively gain 30... to passively give 30% damage resistance while you're amplified. Keep all other functionality. So, when you're amplified, you got more damage resistance. Okay, so those two didn't really need a lot of work. We're delving into the big ones now. So, Berserker. So, this has got the defense with Dringer's Lash and Into the Fray. It's got the damage with Banner of War and, of course, the abilities. And Fletched Storm. And it's got the support with also Into the Fray and Banner of War. So if it has all three of these, he said, we gotta make this subclass a paladin. So, first, I want to tweak Frenzied Blade. I want it to now suspend on hit instead of sever. With this, letting this melee sever, like, automatically makes it contend with Threaded Spike on Strand Hunter. And that one's just better, because that can sever an entire room, whereas this one can just sever one guy. So I want to change it to suspend instead. And also I want to change the animation for Frenzied Blade to change the claws that you have into a greatsword. And for the ability buffs, we are going to make Dringer's Lash now grant Woven Mail to you when you suspend a target. And I want to make Into the Fray. Yeah. And for Into the Fray, I want to add functionality where if you detonate a tangle, it'll also heal you and heal any allies around it for 50 health, along with what it does now. So, I actually want to get rid of the Blade Fury Super, and I'm going to be adding in 2 more. First is Oathweaver. This one's kind of a reskin of Blade Fury, but again, instead of claws, we get a great sword, and we're gonna bring the swing speed down a bit, but we're also gonna make it deal 900 damage, which should keep the damage per second relatively the same as current day Blade Fury. And the second super I've had for quite a while is called Rain of Threads, where instead of a sword, it's a minigun. Killing an enemy with the super will make the target send out unraveling threads, but here's the thing: damage also increases as damage with the super is sustained. And while the super is active, you and all allies around you gain Woven Mail. So, the big inspiration for Rain of Threads is Titans not having any ranged damage supers. So that's another problem I want to tackle. Well, and I do have a couple of ideas for that. So next we have Stasis. We have my main subclass, Behemoth. Now, for this one, I actually wanted to lean into Diamond Lance, like, fully. So, this is gonna be, like, the Spear subclass. So, like, Spartan, Viking, that kind of fantasy. So, for the buffed abilities, I want to make Cryoclasm passively increase shatter damage to 600 while keeping the other functionality. So when it comes to the Stasis subclasses, Revenant, this Hunter subclass, is all about slowing. Shadebinder, the Warlock subclass, is all about freezing. And Behemoth is supposed to be all about shattering. But it's not. So we're gonna change that. Next up is Howl of the Storm. There it is. This one isn't going to see a massive change, but I do want to add a second slam, like Consecration has, to shatter all stasis crystals and frozen targets around you. And I want it to be able to be used during the super. And lastly is a buff to Diamond Lance. I want to make targets frozen by a Diamond Lance, as well as the crystals made with Lance Cap, which is what I'm wearing. Yeah, automatically shatter after a short delay. And I want to make, I want to make the Diamond Lances take 3 seconds for your allies to pick up, while you, the creator, get to pick it up instantly. Because fuck you, Blueberries. Don't take my fucking Diamond Lances. Assholes. So... I'm going to keep Shiver Strike for now. I really shouldn't, but... I just don't really have a better place for it. Because I want to keep it for the movement. Earlier iterations of this has turned it into an aspect, turned it into a class ability, and neither of those just really worked. So, even though I really shouldn't, we're going to be keeping it. But, to keep in line with the theme, we are going to be adding 2 more melees. The first is Throwing Lance. You throw a lance made of stasis energy that will freeze on hit, then shatter after a short delay. It's just a Diamond Lance, but as a melee. Except you don't get to slam it. Then we have Frigid Reach, where you strike with a lance made of stasis energy to hit targets at a longer distance. If you use it behind a stasis crystal, it'll go around the stasis crystal. If it's a medium crystal or a large crystal, but it'll actually go over if you're using it over a small crystal instead. And then, just like we did with Strand, I want to get rid of Glacial Quake, and I want to add 2 new supers. One of them is kind of a reskin, the other not so much. The reskin super is called Gungnir's Frost. You summon a spear out of the stasis energy. Yep. And this one actually has 3 attacks. You can have the lunge and the slam that you do with normal Glacial Quake, and those will work just as fine. No, you get the slam. That's the part that hasn't changed. But we're going to replace the light attack with a swipe. So that will, aside from doing damage, it will also shatter any frozen enemies and stasis crystals in front of you. And there's a third attack linked to your melee button. Here, if you press your melee button, you can actually do a light jab. that can be used multiple times. So, this jab will deal a little less damage, but it will also, it'll also apply 50 slow. So for damage, you can either use the slam, or you can use the jab, followed up by a swipe. So it's kind of a reskin of Glacial Quake, kinda not. But the second new super is a new one called Ishur's Lance. You get to throw 3 lances that will embed into either an enemy or a surface, and they will pulse twice, once to freeze and once to shatter, 5 different times. Wow. And you get 3 of those before you run out. Okay, and I think that might be it for stasis. Removed Glacial Quake. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for stasis. So let's go back in. Let me sit back down, and we can touch on my personal pride and joy. Yeah, my Sunbreaker changes. So, little bit of a lore bit here. The Sunbreakers, plural, were a Titan faction that lived outside of the city. And basically, they were a faction of mercenaries. So with that being where the Sunbreakers that as a faction come from, I want to build into that. So the Sunbreaker rework will function as a mercenary / soldier fantasy. And of course, like we did for Sentinel, I want to get rid of Hammer Strike. But I'm going to replace it with a new melee called Sunstrike. It's just a punch. Maybe you can hit someone with a hammer. I really like the idea of that. But, if you hit an enemy with that melee, they will automatically ignite, and enemies caught in the ignition get scorched. I don't know if... Where is it? There it is. I don't know if I want it to synergize with Ember of Char, but my current idea is that it will, and it'll just increase the amount of of scorch done to the enemies. But before we get into the other new abilities, I have one ability buff, and that's to Sol Invictus. This buff will state that sunspots now apply Sol Invictus to allies by default. So, your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. That will apply to your allies as well by default. But now it'll also provide stability, recoil direction, and handling to your solar weapons. And getting on to the new abilities, I want to add a new class ability for solar, and make it an ammo box. So you put down this ammo box, and you and your allies can pull from it, and it'll give out half reserves for your special and heavy weapons. This ammo crate will have a cooldown time of 100 seconds or 1 minute and 40 seconds. Don't ask me what tier that's in. I don't have the answer. But, I covered the ammo box, we covered Sunstrike. Let's talk about a new solar super called Solar Eruption. If you've ever been to the Highland Games, then you've probably seen the hammer throws that they do there. And I was looking at that and I was like, what if we took the name literally and made it a super? So, you get to throw a massive hammer that, upon landing, will instead shoot solar energy upwards that will continuously deal damage and scorch, while occasionally releasing molten rubble. Like what Hammer of Soul does. Again, more range damage supers for Titans. Please. And lastly, for the new abilities, I want a new aspect. Solar Titan, Solar Hunter, and Void Warlock are the only subclasses in the game that do not have 4 aspects. So, before they give us something disappointing with Sunbreaker, which I know they will, because I don't like Sunbreaker, I am going to give the aspect to it instead. And this will be called Gift of Uros. If you get a kill with a solar ability, or killing a solar debuff target, it'll generate a fire sprite that everyone can pick up. If you pick it up, not only will it grant you the standard grenade energy that all the normal fire sprites do. Make sure I don't despawn. But it'll also give you it'll also give out a little bit of ammo for your special and heavy weapons. Again, I really want Sunbreaker to go into this this giving out ammo kind of fantasy. I mean, we don't really have anything else. Warlocks are giving out cure and restoration, and gunslingers are giving out radiant. So that's already all 3 positive verbs, keywords, given out by 2 different classes, 2 different subclasses. So, with no other keywords to give out, I want to make Sunbreaker give out ammo. Which, again, is going to play into the mercenary soldier fantasy. And then for... Wait, we get that. Ammo box, subtract, solar option, Gibson Burrows, and Soul Invictus. Okay, so for the reworks, I want to make Roaring Flames no longer grant increased ability damage, instead increasing solar weapon damage. But hold on to the increased ability damage, because we're not done with that. Let's just... Don't throw it in the trash yet, just put it to the side. We'll be using that later. But... it'll... Yeah. So, it'll just, let you deal increased damage with your solar weapons instead of your solar abilities. And then, I want to do something with Consecration. I want to rework it. Like, it's fine on Prismatic, because you can stack it with Frenzied Blade, which will give you 3 of them. And that's fine on Prismatic. That's fine where it is. Consecration is pretty much useless on the actual Sunbreaker subclass. So I don't know what I want to do with it. I don't know, maybe causing an ignition with this ability will fucking drop ammo or something. I don't know. But on the actual solar subclass, Consecration is kind of ass. Okay, so I think that's it for Sunbreaker. And now, last and pretty much least, Prismatic Titan. This is the Jack of all trades, Master of none subclass. Oh, are we done? Let's just reload. So, Prismatic. Jack of all trades, Master of none. Emphasis on Master of none. So, real fast, there are a lot of removed and new abilities. So let's put those aside for now. Ugh. And let's talk about... So we have 1 buffed ability and 1 reworked ability. Wait, where are we going? Alter Flame. God damn it. Let's wait for this to play out. Wait for this. Because if I go into the screen now, it's going to close out when I load in. It always does that. So let's just wait to load in. Here. This is my corner. So, Prismatic Titan. Let's go over the one buff and the one rework before we get into just removing and adding things. So, Hammer of Soul is kind of ass on Prismatic. So, I want to let it deplete 10% energy on use instead of the standard 12%, since what really makes Hammer of Soul good is the duration being extended by Sol Invictus. Now, of course, on Prismatic, we don't have Sol Invictus. So, let's just make the throws take up less energy. Yep. That should be fine. Now for the reworked is Shield Throw. I want this to apply Volatile on hit instead of granting a small overshield. Now this is gonna be just for Prismatic. This won't change on Void, since we've got an aspect for that. But it's kind of the thing that makes Shield Throw worth using on Void, because your Shield Throw with Volatile, it's very good. So I want to make that the new thing for Shield Throw. Okay. Here's where the meat of Prismatic comes in. Taking things out and putting things in. So instead, let's cover one thing we're removing and then what we're replacing it with. So, first, I want to get rid of Twilight Arsenal in exchange for Sentinel Shield. I think Bungie wants to give Prismatic the kind of meh things about the subclass while keeping the really good ones for the actual monochromatic subclass. And Twilight Arsenal is really, really, really good. So, by their own logic, let's replace Twilight Arsenal with Sentinel Shield. Besides, people are already sleeping on Sentinel Shield. Don't do that. Sentinel Shield is really good. Next is Knockout. I want to replace this with Storm's Keep, the new arc aspect for Titan. I want this aspect to take Knockout's place. I really like the Bolt Charge aspect of this aspect. And it's a somewhat decent wait, does that apply to allies as well? When allies gain stack of bolt charge over time. Okay, yeah. So it's kind of an okay support aspect. So instead of just okay. And then let's replace Consecration with Gift of Uros. And on Prismatic, it will actually apply to all elemental pickups. The only things different are it will give less ammo from Stasis Shards and Ionic Traces, since you get so many of them. And I want Destroyed Tangles to drop ammo blocks. So, also let's replace Hammer Strike with Sunstrike. And then I actually kind of want to replace Thunderclap with Bolt Strike. Or do I? I'll leave that up to y'all. Y'all want to keep Thunderclap on Prismatic, or would you rather have it replaced with Bolt Strike? But I do want to replace Shiver Strike with Throwing Lance. I just think it works for the Titan class better than Shiver Strike does, unfortunately. And then okay. This one isn't really like a huge thing. We don't really have to do this. But I feel like we could replace Pulse Grenade with Flashbang, and we could replace Suppressor with Scatter. So, it's not really a huge thing. We can do it, we can. We cannot. Really, I don't really care, but like, I think that would be a good pick. And okay, so that's the last of the subclasses. So now let's go and talk exotics. I have reworked some exotics. So, try to bring up the lesser exotic pieces and make them somewhat capable. So we have a slight rework to Eternal Warrior. I want to keep the armor charge functionality of this exotic, but I want to replace the damage bonus with faster recharge. So you gain +5 intellect for every armor charge, which seems like a lot, but like at max armor stacks, so times 6, you get only a +30 intellect, which is nothing to scoff at, but it's nothing game breaking, especially since you have to build around it, build into it. But other than that, everything else is actually fine. And we have a buff to Loreley Splendor. Well, I put it as a buff, but really it's more of a slight rework. uh, I want it to work the way it does now, but uh, I want to have it buff sunspots. So back in the day, this would make sunspots grant ×2 restoration instead of the ×1 it normally gives. They normally give. So I want it to grant the ×2 restoration, but only while you're standing in the sunspot. So if you step out of the sunspot, or the sunspot goes away, no more restoration, you're fucked. So it's more of a give you some time to think about how you're gonna get out of this exotic, rather than just literally too angry to die, like it used to be. So, should I talk about this? I mean, they kind of already did that. Yeah. Nah, I'll leave it alone. And then, Crest of Alpha Loopy, I've added a buff. So, this part generates an additional orb of power from supers. That doesn't really do anything for the exotic. So I want to change that. So when the Crest of All, so when your barricade takes damage, it'll like any kind of damage, it'll generate an orb of power. Right. On every single hit, with an internal cooldown of 1.5 seconds, so it's not too broken. And keep the healing pulse. Hellfire. Okay. So, greatly improves recharge rate of your melee and grenade while your super is charged. So, this was a thing back in D1. Nah. I kind of want to get rid of that to make Hellfire like the Sunspot exotic. Are we getting rid of that entirely, or? No. No, okay. So, don't throw that away. Put it right next to, the Roaring Flames thing. So, take the increased ability recharge while your super is active. Put that right next to where you put the, increased ability damage from Roaring Flames, because we're going to use those. But I want to replace that on Hellfire with slightly extending Sunspot lifetime, because I've tried to use this one. I've tried to use Hellfire, and it's it'd work better. I just kept thinking this will work better if sunspots lasted just a little bit longer. So I want to give that slight duration extension to Hellfire by default. And then Lion Rampant. So back when Final Shape released, Lion Rampant was actually bugged. What Lion Rampant does now is it lets you hip fire your weapons while you're in the air. But there was a bug that that made it also let you aim down sights while in the air. Right? And people loved it. And then Bungie took it away because people were loving it. So, really, my only buff for Lion Rampant is bring that bug back. It's more of a fun thing than making it useful thing. It's not like Lion Rampants are useless. Far from it, but given the jump boost, but people really liked it, so just for that reason, I want to bring it back. Next is Dune Marchers. So I have heard people saying that Dune Marchers should jolt enemies instead of just the standard chain lightning that you get with it normally. But I feel like if we made it jolt, then it would be contending with Cannon Brace. So I'm not going to do that. Instead, getting a charged melee hit will grant 2 stacks of bolt charge, while getting a charged melee kill will grant you 5 stacks of bolt charge. And when you use a melee ability while at full stacks, it'll activate bolt charge. And we're keeping the increased sprint speed. Now, they buffed Ballistic Slam to make it grant bolt charge. So I don't know if they're gonna stack or if they're gonna cancel out. Knowing Bungie, they'll probably make it they'll probably just give you the stronger of the two. The stronger effect of the two. But if I had things my way, they would stack. Stand-asides. I want to change the overshield to no longer be tied to a melee. Instead, only being tied to your base sprint. And I want to extend the ability recharge portion to all melees. So, with us getting rid of all but one shoulder strike melee, this is going to be somehow more useless than it already is. So, I want to make it useful. My throat. Phoenix Cradle. Remember, we're making Sunspots, share Sol Invictus by default. So we're going to be changing that to Sunspots granting Radiant and Restoration while standing in a sunspot you made. Yeah. So this is going to be more of a support exotic. Well, it's going to be a better support exotic than it's currently trying to be. Path of Burning Steps. Okay. So, this exotic was a band-aid solution for a problem that never came up again. So I am giving it a total rework. Now, standing in a sunspot will instead fill a firewalker meter. And when you walk out of the sunspot, it will deplete firewalker, but it'll actually leave behind pools of fire wherever you step. I really like this idea, and it really works well with the name. So, I really like the idea of this. And the last one is Aviant Leap, which is getting a total nerf. Gain Woven Mail when you suspend a target. That's on Dringer's Lash now. So we're gonna be removing that portion. And keeping the aspect improvement. So, bit of a nerf, but really it shouldn't hit it too hard. And then we actually have, if this will load. Let me get these pictures real fast. Oh, that's really tiny. Let's open it. Okay. So, well, I did finish talking about what I wanted to talk about. We're actually not done. Because I actually have 3 new not reworked, fuck, what's the term? We have 3 new exotics returning from Destiny 1. Reprised, that's it. 3 exotic armor pieces reprised from Destiny 1. And the first we're going to talk about is Ruin Wings. I've heard some at Titan mains wanting this to make a return. And well, technically yes, they could kind of return as they were in D1. We don't do that here. So, instead, what these are going to do is benefit the new ammo box class ability for Solar. So when you have Ruin Wings, you and your allies actually get full reserves from your ammo crate instead of half. Again, these are going to be the ammo exotic. Next up is Immolation Fists. Now, do you remember where you put the increased recharge time and increased ability damage? That's where they come into play. So these will benefit Roaring Flames and will grant bonus ability damage and ability recharge time to Roaring Flames. So while base Roaring Flames is going to be focused more on your solar weapons, Immolation Fists are going to be more focused on your solar abilities. And then the exotic that everyone was talking about. Titan mains, I want you to say it with me now. The third reprised exotic is Twilight Garrison. Good job. You get a gold star for that. So, this will automatically replace your barricade ability with the thruster class ability, which, if you'll remember, is on Arc and on Prismatic. But with Twilight Garrison, you no longer have to use it on just those two subclasses. You get to use them on the other four as well. And as it to not make it just benefit 4 out of the 6 subclasses, it will allow you to now use your thruster ability while in midair, which is what it did back in D1. I know Bungie said they weren't gonna do that because class identity, blah 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 blah. Whatever. I don't care. Truthfully. I want to make this. I want to make the game fun to play, and sometimes that means costing some class identity. Fucking whatever. And if you're wondering, what Icarus Dash will have over Twilight Garrison, you already get a faster recharge time, and if you're running Heat Rises, you also get 2 of them. This one is literally just a class ability. So, even though we'd technically have it, we still wouldn't have it to the same extent that Warlocks would. Okay. Fuck. Ow, my throat. Okay. So, that was my full, that is how I would rework the Titan class. So, if you've got thoughts, let me know. Civilly, of course. So, actually, let's bring that over here. Find someone to raid. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, or especially any ideas, any of your own ideas, please let me know. I want to encourage discussion on this. So, because I'm just one person. No. This is not going to be, something made by just one person. So, let's come together, Titan mains, and discuss these changes. And then maybe, we can... Maybe we can get Bungie to see this. Let them make a change. Well, make them make a change for Titans to benefit Titans as a class. But that's all I got for now. For those of you watching on YouTube, I will see y'all later. For those of you on